What's up guys? It's yo boy Omnisensei back with part 2 of What If OC Becomes Sasuke After the 4th Shinobi War, CX Sakura x KARIN. If you enjoy my content, consider buying me a coffee. Link in the description. Like the video, share, and subscribe. Remember to check out the author of this fantastic fanfic. Link in the description. With all that out of the way, let's get into it.
Sasuke POV. I was asleep, I was resting. My mind was being entertained by a sweet dream. It was unaware and at peace, but then it was not. Clarity struck, and my mind became fully aware. Aware that I was asleep, aware of where I slept and who I was sleeping with. It was as if there was a universal clock inside me, waking me up exactly when I needed, and even though I was asleep, I had a rough estimation of how long I slept. My body quickly discarded itself from sleeping. My slow and rhythmic breath turned a little stronger and faster. The frequent beating of my heart picked up pace as my body temperature slowly increased. It was amazing how well informed I was on anything that was happening in my body, controlled or not. I opened my eyelids, and I was assaulted by delight. The visions were blurry only for a brief moment before I was able to get a clear picture of the world, and it was beautiful. Or should I say, she was beautiful. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was the face of KARIN. Her peaceful expression made me unconsciously soften my breaths, terrified that I might destroy her peace. Lesser strands of her hair were glued to her face by sweat, and her lips were patty and swollen. She did not wear her glasses, and I was able to truly behold the shape and delicate features of her face without obstruction. It was a fact that the eye would beg to be closed again when you woke up demanding more sleep, but her sight countered that urge, convincing me to keep my eyes open at least for an hour or two. I observed the small smile that seemed to be permanently stitched onto her face for a long time, before I was able to motivate myself to move. I pushed myself off the bed and carefully made my way out of it. Without making a sound, I put on my clothes and the equipment that I had prepared last night. After I was done, I silently walked near my bed again and looked down at the girl sprawling on the white sheets. The blanket innocently covered the sacred parts of her body, which were big and small at the right places, making her form feel edible to me. I was certain that I did not take more than a minute to change, and I was sure to silence my movements, but here she was, wide awake and faking sleep. It would have slipped past most people, but I knew she was awake, from the pattern of her breathing and her posture, which had slightly shifted and now looks rigid, as if she was intentionally staying in that specific pose. I did not know why she was acting as if she was asleep, but I was not curious enough to ask and reveal her. I stood silently for a while before I bent down slowly, making sure not to alarm her. Then I planted a soft kiss on her head. "I will see you again," I said, choosing not to say goodbye to give her hope, yet not adding soon to not let her have too high expectations. Then I was gone, instantly. I felt myself entering a dimensional void and exiting it. But I was at a different location, meaning the point where I entered and left the dimension was different. That was basically how the Flying Thunder God works. Between the different dimensions present in this world, like the Kage dimension and the Kamui dimension etc., there is a space between them. A dimensional void where there is no matter, therefore should not exist, but it exists. This dimensional void runs parallel to the whole universe, and, therefore, connects everything. So the technique allows me to enter this dimension, travel through nothing instantaneously, and leave the dimension right at the place I marked. Meaning, this dimensional void acts as a wormhole. Yes, the Flying Thunder God works on the principles of wormholes, who would have guessed? One moment I was in the cabin, kissing KARIN's head, and in that same moment I was here, on the borders of the country of fire. The place I found myself in was on top of a mountain with sparse vegetation. It was dark and damp, and I could see the rising sun on the horizon, still not in its full golden glory, but a warmer orange. A chilling breeze blew faintly, fluttering my hair and the cloth of my left arm. I looked at it, confirming that the cloth was indeed not filled with an arm as it was supposed to be, which enabled it to flutter and wave to the tune of the breeze. It's really about time now, to get a new arm and a possible power-up. Hashirama cells, I said, chewing the word in my mouth. My mind worked on possibilities and calculating the probability. With those thoughts dancing in mind, I was gone with the wind, my next destination being home. Third POV. It took no more than a few hours for Sasuke to reach the village hidden in the leaf. Though it was called a village, it was more like a city, where more than 100,000 people live. The village, as the name suggests, resides deep within a forest, and the village sits at the base of a huge mountain known as the Hokage Rock. The land was fertile, and forest resources were abundant, making it suitable for people to not only survive but thrive. The village was surrounded by huge walls that protected them from all sides. The only way to get into the village was through the main gate, which was always guarded. Sasuke arrived in the village through his hawk-summoned Garuda. He rode over the walls of Konoha and headed towards the Hokage's office. His summon hovered in the sky above the Hokage office, and Sasuke looked down at the village from the sky with unknown emotions in his eyes. "Shinra Tensei," he said ominously. "Haha, it was sad, but also really cool when Pain did that," he said to himself, thinking about how Pain flattened the village with one attack. He pondered about the amount of chakra that should be needed to pull off an attack like that, and found himself coming up with better ways to destroy the village, something that required less chakra and was more efficient. "What am I thinking?" He shook off those useless thoughts and lightly tapped on his summon. "Thank you, Garuda, you can go now." With a puff of white smoke, the giant hawk disappeared, leaving him to fall from the sky. He shifted his body and directly dived towards the red building, with the kanji fire written on it. When he was about to crash into the building, his speed slowed down and gently floated towards the roof. Earth release. Light and boulder jutsu. He landed gracefully and quickly made his way inside the Hokage's office through the window. Third POV. The 6th Hokage, Hada Kakashi, was checking some reports on a recent mission, reading the details of what happened during the mission and the injuries the ninjas had suffered. He appeared focused on the paper, but the slight change in the air stole his attention. He was alarmed. The person moved so fast and swiftly that he did not notice it until he was already in front of him. Without a change in expression, he looked up and found a person in front of his table. The man wore a dark cloak that hid most of his body, and under it, he wore a dark blue tunic and black pants. He could also see a sword strapped to the right side of his body. His hair was spiky, but there was also a bang that covered almost half of his face, including his left eye. His body posture alone was enough for anyone strong to be wary of the fact that he was likely stronger than them. "Sasuke," he quickly addressed with a nod, a greeting, and a signal to the Anbu hiding in the shadows that everything was okay. "Lord Hokage, you don't have to address me so formally," Kakashi said with a wave of his hand and a close-eyed smile. Sasuke nodded. "I am here to report my return. It is good to have you back, but I assume you will leave again after you do whatever you need here." Sasuke gave a silent nod. Kakashi then shifted his eyes from Sasuke. "Could you call Sakura, please?" Kakashi asked one of the 4 Anbu, and he immediately flickered away to do as ordered. Kakashi then turned to Sasuke, and they engaged in a short conversation in which they talked about why he was back and the current situation of Konoha. Sasuke also told him some information about criminal activities in the Fire Country, which he got from his idle chat with KARIN and others. Then, the door suddenly slammed open, revealing a girl with soft pink hair and bright green eyes. "Sasuke," she approached him and excitedly stood by his side. "You are already back." She smiled. Then her eyes widened, and she turned towards Kakashi, and inclined her head with a blush. "Good morning, Lord Hokage." Kakashi nodded at her with a warm smile. "Sakura, could you please inform Lady Tsunade that Sasuke is here, and would like to do the operation?" "Of course," she said, and then Kakashi told her to do the operation on him as soon as possible. After that, Kakashi dismissed them, and both Sasuke and Sakura left the office and began their walk through the village. Sakura was not feeling as awkward as Sasuke did, and due to that, they were able to engage in some pleasant conversation. They walked around the village, and after a while they arrived at the hospital, revealing that Sakura was not just walking around aimlessly, and was instead leading him to the hospital. They entered and had a talk with Tsunade, and with that, they concluded the operation would start tomorrow, and Sasuke was to stay in the hospital for that. The operation was held the next day, and it took almost the whole day to safely transplant Hashirama cells into his body to grow a new arm. The operation went smoothly, but Tsunade suggested at least 3 days to get used to the arm before leaving again. With 3 days of free time, he used to rest and overall just hang around the village, meeting up with Naruto and even getting a ramen with him. He used this time to enjoy and take a breather for a moment after 1 month of secluded training. But he was not staying idle either. He was doing some training and experiments using his new arm. He also got to know Sakura better, and they even went on some kind of date on the last day, which they used to collect weapons and other ninja stuff for Sasuke, basically shopping. Sakura was delighted at how her relationship with Sasuke was progressing, and she finally had some form of hope for the future. Sasuke was also liking the girl more and more, indulging and allowing himself to selfishly enjoy her advances and affection. But soon it was time for Sasuke to leave the village again. Early in the morning, when the sky hasn't met the sun and when darkness persists, Sasuke bid farewell to the village hidden in the leaf. Sakura watched him as he left. She was sad and teary, but she was also filled with a sense of satisfaction and hope due to their recent interactions. She wished he would love her back. She would do anything to earn his love. And seeing how things are going, it does not seem impossible. She knew she was far from perfect. She knew she was selfish, and her love could be annoying, but she wanted to be honest. And she believed that if she stayed true to herself, things might play out for her. She will try her best. But for now, all she could do was watch as he left like he always did, and wonder how much it would take her to finally make him stay. She would have given him everything she had to make him stay if that was enough, but she knew that was not enough. But for now, she was content and happy to know that he will return. He blitzed through the darkness and made his way outside the border of Konoha. After leaping from tree to tree, he jumped down on the ground and took a meaningless rest. He connected the palm of his hand with the trunk of a tree for support. His mind was in a state of serene madness. It was preparing itself for war, yet it refused to let go of its peaceful state. He looked towards his hand that was resting on the tree. The bare trunk was now covered in vines that were not there before. Would release. He muttered as he took back his hand. At the previous place of his palm, there was a marking. If a master Fuinjutsu were to look at it, they would be able to make out some meaning, such as anchor gate summon etc. The flying thunder god was getting stronger, and he will continue to get stronger until he reaches his full potential. He looked up at the brightening sky. The sun was finally rising on the horizon. It shyly peeked out from between the mountains with a reddish hue. He began moving again. He could not afford to stop now. He will move forward, that is the only way to go. He moved towards the sun, towards the light. Towards the east, towards the Ryuchi cave. Time skipped 2 years, third POV too fast for the simple mind to comprehend. They moved too fast for common sense to wrap itself around. Their speed almost reached that of light. They blitzed through the landscape and collided with each other. Everywhere they go, they leave destruction and devastation. The earth opened up, and the air gave up resistance, and just let them do as they pleased. The sound of metal hitting metal could be heard through the forest. Trees were felled right and left due to the sharpness of the battle. Sasuke's whole body was covered in blue lightning that crackled with every movement he made. His right eye glowed an eerie red, and the tomo of his Sharingan revolved rapidly to keep up with the ongoing battle. His opponent was a man with gray skin and horns protruding out from his head. He was encased in purple energy that seemed to amplify his speed to an absurd degree, and he was also holding a sword made of purple energy in his hand. They both swung their weapons at each other, and they clashed again for the nth each time. Sasuke had a stoic expression that was devoid of any thought and emotion, while his opponent scrunched his face together in annoyance. They continued moving at absurd speeds as they exchanged attacks left and right. They were in a stalemate until the sword made of energy changed shape and had a curve-like end that latched itself to Sasuke's sword. He yanked his new weapon with a burst of strength and managed to remove Sasuke's sword from his grip. Die. His opponent cursed as he swung his weapon right at his head. Sasuke was unarmed and seemed to be in a pinch. Time slowed down for him as he saw the attack nearing his neck. Then space was manipulated, and in an instant, his sword that was suspended behind his opponent switched places with him, giving him an opening behind his opponent's back. The lightning that covered his body concentrated in his right hand, and he swiped at his opponent. His hands blurred at the speed of light, and he easily sent the body of his opponent flying away like a ragdoll. He then brought his right hand above his head, and made a Rasengan that was further augmented with wind chakra to form the Rasen Shuriken. It took him no more than a second to send the attack along the trail of destruction caused by the enemy's body. The jutsu wrapped the air around it and swiftly cut through the atmosphere, reaching the place his opponent crashed at, in a curve rather than a linear path. Then a huge explosion took place, and a dome of destruction materialized, destroying everything inside down to a cellular level. The air screamed as it was forcefully torn apart. Everything inside, the range of the attack, was reduced to nothing. Everything was shredded into microscopic pieces. It took some time for the attack to occur, and Sasuke immediately reached the center of the destruction. But he found only an empty space. He stood there and just observed the huge crater he stood on, which was a result of the devastating jutsu. Silence. There was really no one else to be found, not above in the sky or under the ground. It would seem that his opponent had left. Sasuke closed his eyes and concentrated on the markings of Flying Thunder God that he planted on his opponent during the fight. He tried to sense the location of his mark and found it, but it was on an entirely different dimension now. Sasuke pondered whether he should teleport to his location to continue the battle, but decided against it. He lacks information. There could be more than one of them in that dimension, or there may even be a trap. If he carelessly followed him now, on his opponent's turf, it could turn bad for him. Even though he could just teleport away if he was left with no choice, he'd rather not let his opponent know that he had marked him and revealed that he could teleport near him anytime. He stood there in silence, contemplating about the situation. An unknown variable had appeared, and his future knowledge proved to be imperfect. He needed to tread more carefully now. Nightfall. Sasuke's POV. It has been around 2 years since I began my travel around the world in search of power, and I have come a long way since then. My combat prowess had taken an exceptional leap during those years. I have mastered all nature transformation and was a master at any type of elemental release. I had become like the third Hokage in this regard, not only capable of using all the 5 basic elements, but I was a master at all of them. The difference was that I was also extremely proficient in other Kage Genkais, and was a master in some useful ones. I also could not forget about the forbidden jutsus. After all, most of the time these were the most powerful jutsus. I could not say that I have learned every jutsus or technique that has ever existed, but I sure did learn and master everything that I thought could increase my power. Every jutsus I knew from my other life and all the prominent ones, I gathered them all. I have also dealt with the problem that would have plagued me in the future, chakra. I have increased my chakra reserve by a lot. My chakra reserve doubled when I used Sage mode, and I also increased my base chakra level to a certain degree. And talking about Sage mode, it proved to be an easy endeavor. The Hashirama cells on my left arm were a huge help. It was like these cells were made to absorb natural chakra. The Hashirama cells coupled with my experience in using Senjutsu through the curse mark, made it quite easy to learn Sage mode. Regarding being out of chakra, having high control over chakra was also a great way to prevent the problem. Efficiency played a huge part in this matter. But whatever I did, there was only so much I could do to increase my chakra. Sage mode helps, training helps, and Hashirama cells help. But in the end, I still could not compete with the likes of Naruto and Hashirama. I knew it was a really tough comparison, but I needed to be on their level. Becoming a Jinchuriki was an option I considered, but in the end, I found a better and more efficient solution to deal with my low chakra. A solution that did not only solve my low chakra compared to the likes of Naruto, but also gave me a huge boon. There were also many other power-ups I acquired that I did not mention, but as I am now, I was confident about going head-to-head with any Otsutsuki. Overall, I was sure that I had become the strongest shinobi that had ever existed. But even after all these, I was still extremely on edge. After all, not only have I been unable to find a Siki, I have just discovered a new variable. An Otsutsuki that I was not aware of. It was not Mamashiki, Kinshiki, Urashiki, nor was it a Siki. It was another one, someone who should have never appeared if we were following the story of Naruto. I was not sure if this Otsutsuki was introduced in Boruto, but I was certain there was no mention of me, Sasuke, fighting someone like him during this time. My mind was working overtime. I was panicking, as I rightfully should be. This is the Otsutsuki we are talking about. Even one could change the whole game. The only thing that gave me respite was the fact that he does not seem to be too strong for the current me at least. But this also brought up the question, was he the only one who would appear next? What if there were more than one new Otsutsuki? What if someone as strong or even stronger than Isahiki appeared next? It was a scary thought, making me subconsciously tense my body. I feel like some higher power was screwing with me, maybe something like fate. Something that made the enemy stronger, just because I was stronger than what I should be. I sighed, this is really troublesome. I summoned Garuda and hopped on top of him. Then we took to the sky, and the wind that hit my face worked to blow away some fatigue from me. Whatever happens, I need to be ready. I have marked all the tailed beasts with Flying Thunder God, and also monitored them 24/7 using seals. I should be alerted immediately if something happens. I would have loved to investigate more about this new Otsutsuki and even Mamashiki, but right now I have more important things to deal with. It was a cold and chilly night. The coming winter was already making itself known to the world. The chilling breeze was its messenger. The moon lowly hung in the dark sky. It was not a full moon, but it was just as bright as one, making it stand out among the countless glittering stars. The moon sure is getting bigger fast. I said out loud as we flew in the night sky illuminated by the silver light. The Kage summit, third POV. What? The moon is falling. The Reikage asked in his rough voice. His tone was calm, yet it clearly indicated shock and disbelief. Yes, the moon is clearly getting closer to Earth. Kakashi, the Hokage confirmed. So that was the reason for the increase of meteorites. The Kazekage Gar added as if he just came to a realization, throwing out evidence for the others who were still incredulous. A woman scientist with blonde hair moved slightly towards the table where the cages sat and said, "Allow me to explain." Then the roof above the table began shifting, and a circular machine that could show projection appeared. All the cages looked at the image of the moon and Earth, as the scientist explained in great detail about the situation. The two celestial bodies were getting closer and closer to each other. The gravitational pull of the Earth was causing the surface of the moon to break and fall towards it, which they see now as a meteorite. If things were left as it was, the moon would completely break apart and the fragments would fall on Earth. This will inevitably lead to the destruction of mankind as a whole. Is this a natural phenomenon or is it a man-made assault? Asked Terumi, the Mizukage. Every cage looked towards the Hokage, the one who called the summit, for answers. The question, and the answer to that is yes, it is man-made. Kakashi announced, and the others had a pensive look on their face. Who could do such a thing? Asked Inoki, the Tsuchikage. Toneri Otsutsuki. The cages perked up at the last name. They were aware of the power and weight that name holds. It was not public knowledge, but the cages and top officials were aware of the Otsutsukus, and knew that fairy tales like the Sage of Six Paths were exactly not fairy tales. Even if they were not there to witness it, they knew about the appearance of Kagaya Otsutsuki in the fourth great shinobi world, and the battle that decided the fate of the world. They waited in rapt attention to what Kakashi was saying next. It was Sasuke Uchiha who informed us about the incoming calamity and the person behind it. Even as we speak, Sasuke is currently investigating the whereabouts of Toneri Otsutsuki to try and stop his plan. The cages simply nodded at that. They did not even question the credibility of the information, because it was provided by Sasuke Uchiha. During his travels, Sasuke undermined many problems around the world and saved a bunch of people and villages. He was the bane of evil around the world. Anything that could harm the peace and people, he extinguished. He did all these mostly because he wanted to train himself and practice his justice, but also to repent for his criminal days. And some secret justice he requested received as a reward was a nice bonus as well. Sasuke had become someone who protected the world from the shadows. He was greatly appreciated by the Kages who knew what he did. They knew how strong Sasuke was, and they could put a certain amount of faith that he would solve this problem as well as he had done in the past. Nevertheless, it is not certain that Sasuke will be able to stop him, so we need to prepare for the worst, Kakashi said, and the others nodded in agreement. They then went on to talk about the precautions to be taken and how civilians should be protected. They went on to discuss their last resort, blowing up the moon. This is a last resort because it was impossible to fully destroy the moon. They could only minimize the damage if that happens, and many fragments will still crash onto the earth. Not to mention the disaster that would follow the total absence of the moon. The world was under threat yet again, and the leader of each village racked their brains for the best course of action. A few days passed. Third POV yesterday was the Rin Festival, a time of the year when loved ones got together for a holiday. It was a time when loved ones gave each other gifts and spent their time with each other. It was supposed to be a day of happiness and joy, but the morning that followed was anything but joyful. Last night, when everyone was finally able to rest and enjoy their time, evil was at work. On that night that was supposed to be merry, a disaster struck. The heir of the Hyuga clan, Hanabi Hyuga, was kidnapped from her home. A child was taken away, yet the intention of the kidnapper was still unknown. Not only that, a meteorite had struck the outskirts of Konoha. It was a warning, a sample of the disaster that would follow. The people were panicking, they asked questions and demanded answers. It was a very bad day for all the people of Konoha. Konoha, HOKAG-S office. In the HOKAG-S office, 7 people could be seen. One was standing beside the Hokage, and the other 5 were standing in front of him. The Hokage was explaining about the mission that he was giving to these 5 people. Your mission is to rescue the kidnapped Hanabi Hyuga, Kakashi said to the 4 people standing in front of him. There were Shikamaru, Sai, Sakura, Naruto, and Hinata. Shikamaru will lead this 4-man team, and I am granting HINATA-S request to join the mission. Thank you, Lord Hokage. Hinata bowed her head to show her gratitude. Shikamaru, put your hand out, Kakashi said, and Shikamaru did as he was asked. Then the scientist who was standing at the side of the Hokage made a single hand sign, and a clock-like tattoo appeared on SHIKAMARU-S palm. What's this? Shikamaru asked. That is a top-secret clock that is counting down the time left until Earth's destruction, Kakashi explained. They all snapped their heads and looked at the Hokage in both shock and disbelief. They were unaware of such a thing, so their reaction was understandable. Then Kakashi explained to them again about the situation of the world. He told them about the moon that was breaking apart and falling towards the earth. They were stunned, to say the least, but it was not their first time facing a world-ending threat, so they quickly regained composure. They had faced worse. They told themselves. Wait, how is this related to the mission? Shikamaru questioned thoughtfully. Kakashi stayed quiet for a while, and then he said in a clear voice, the man who kidnapped Hanabi is Toneri Sasuke, the same man who is manipulating the moon. Sakura's eyes whitened at the mention of his name, and her face creased into a thoughtful expression. Naruto's face also took an unusual turn as he frowned deeply. Well, I wish you luck. The fate of the world is resting on your shoulder, Kakashi said in a carefree tone with his signature ice smile. A funny tone he had taken to put the huge burden of the world on their shoulder. Third POV. It was an unforgiving day. The weather could not have been further from ideal. The earth was covered by a blanket of thick snow that buried the vegetation. The air was freezing, and the wind that blew inconsistently was painful whenever it brushed against the skin. Everything was covered by the ice, painting an image so white that it hurt the eyes. The sky was also clouded by white fog, giving weight to the atmosphere, and making the day look bleaker than it was. On that day, Team Shikamaru was on a mission to save Hanabi Hyuga. The 5 Shinobis rode on 4 giant eagles made of ink. They flew in the sky, searching for clues or tracks that could lead them to the kidnapper. Hinata was using her Byakugan to scan the surroundings, and the others were not idle either. They combed through the land carefully, their eyes always searching and their ears always open for a sound, for a scream. They searched for a long time before they stumbled upon a cave. Guys, there is a glowing spring inside the cave, Hinata said. They flew down and went inside the cave. As they went deeper into the cave, the cold air was replaced by a warm one that did not kill their lungs whenever they inhaled. At the end of the cave, they finally came to the glowing spring that Hinata mentioned. They observed carefully and noticed that they did not get wet when they touched it. That completely destroyed the idea of it being a spring. It was not even water. Hinata, can you see what is inside? Shikamaru asked. No, my vision is obstructed. She shook her head helplessly. Something is obstructing a Byakugan, huh? Shikamaru commented as he went into thought. Then we'll just have to go and see. Naruto said, ever straightforward and brave. The tracks that they have found till now indicate that the kidnapper went inside this cave. So they had no choice but to jump in and explore it. They jumped in the water and swam to the bottom of it where there was a pocket space. They swam downwards, and when they came out of the end, they were caught in a genjutsu that used their memories as a trap. Luckily, Sakura was nigh immune to genjutsu, and they were able to safely continue their advance. The gravity in that pocket space was distorted, and after a long time of jumping from stone to stone, they made it to the other side where they found the same spring-like glowing liquid. They jumped in and successfully came out the other side. Naruto and Hinata took longer than others, but they also eventually came out the other side. Once they were all together, they continued their advance. They walked for only a few meters before they were met with a gruesome sight. "Oh my god, what happened here?" Sakura asked as she took in the sight. Slimy brown liquid and flesh-like blobs that they take to be the inside of a creature sprawled across the rocks, and was continuously dripping down from above. They look up to find a giant crab, probably the size of a boss summon, stuck on the ceiling of the cave. It was squashed, and one could see that it was pushed by a huge force against the roof of the cave. It was almost like a giant hand slapped it against the ceiling like a bug. Which was a scary thought considering the sheer size of the crab. It must be the kidnapper. "It looks recent, he couldn't be far," Shikamaru said, and they all sprinted towards the exit of the cave. "He's outside," Hinata yelled as they all quickened their pace. They quickly made it outside and were ready to fight, but when they took a closer look at the person, they were surprised and dropped their guards. Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto called out in unison. The person wearing a dark long cloak and dark blue pants turned around. It was the face of Sasuke, except he had two normal Rinnegan. Upon closer observation, they noticed that he had different piercings on his body. He did not wear any shirt, and the body that the cloak did not cover showed different black receivers that impaled his body along with a tattoo on his chest. Upon taking in his whole form, Sakura and Naruto became hesitant to approach him. So they settled on pausing and observing him from a few meters away. Naruto tried and sensed his chakra, and noticed that it was almost identical to Sasuke's chakra, but it was smaller and felt incomplete like a single piece of a puzzle. "You guys are already here," he said. That voice. Sakura could not have mistaken that smooth voice, so she moved towards him and gave him an excited hug. Sasuke gently hugged her back, but Sakura winced when she felt the black rod poke on her body. She retracted and moved back after a short time. "Oh, I get it, you are doing that puppet control thing like Pain, using your Rinnegan," Naruto announced as he also moved closer to him. Seeing that, the others came forward too. "A puppet, huh?" Shikamaru said as he pinched his chin, and he looked up and down at Sasuke. It was not a puppet but looked more like a corpse. He decided not to comment. "Why are you using a puppet?" he can't help but ask. "I don't feel comfortable wandering this far away from home. My real body is back on Earth," Sasuke said, leaving them confused. "Earth? What do you mean?" Naruto asked what was on their mind. Sasuke blinked his spiral purple eyes twice before he mouthed, "Aw." He continued, "You guys don't know where we are. Aren't we underground?" Shikamaru asked. "I don't think so," said Sai as he waved his hand to indicate the surroundings. The surrounding was an ocean, and they could see an island on the horizon. There was even a sky and a sun, or at least what looked like the sky and the sun. "No, we are not underground. The spring that you guys came through was a teleportation gate," Sasuke said to them. "Then where are we exactly?" Sakura quizzed. Sasuke turned his head away and carefully observed the surroundings with his purple eyes as he said, "We are on the moon. HOKAG_S office, SASUKEH_SPOV, they are on the moon." I said to Kakashi and saw him raise an eyebrow. I could not see his whole face due to the mask, but I was sure he must be surprised. "Why are they on the moon?" he asked. "Toneri Otsutsuki is on the moon," I said, and Kakashi just nodded and stretched the word right, as if he understood the situation. "Can they stop him?" he asked, and I said, "Most likely. Toneri is strong, but Naruto alone is enough to defeat him, but we are on his turf, so it's not certain." I narrowed my eyes as I came to disagree with my statement before I said, "Forget my previous statement, there is no way Naruto will lose." Kakashi let out a tired sigh, and I honestly couldn't blame him. "Don't worry too much, Kakashi-sensei, just don't let the wreckage destroy the moon before failure is certain," I said. Destroying the moon was stupid. Most humanity will still be wiped out by the disaster that would follow, so it should be saved as the very last resort. I got it. "Then, if you'll excuse me," I said and exited the Hokage office. I ran around the village and observed everything carefully. The village was encased in snow and it was a cold day. The people of the village were going around here and there, trying to prepare for the possible disaster. The Hokage had announced about the possibility of the moon falling on Earth, so the people were getting ready. Meanwhile, the ninjas were busy preparing a safe bunker of some sort just outside the village. It was chaotic and people were worried about their lives, but unfortunately, not everyone is like that. Some people took advantage of the chaos and thrived in times like these. "Help!" I heard a scream of a woman in some isolated home. I jumped on the roof of the building and made my way inside it through the window. Shut up, bitch. You were the reason I lost all my money. My business was doing well until you. A man was holding his sword above a woman who was lying on the floor, beaten. I quickly arrived behind him and yanked him away from the woman. I then proceeded to put him in a jinjutsu. People like him were not scarce in these times of chaos. I mean, if there was a high chance of the world ending, you would want to enjoy your last moment and do whatever you want, right? Killing that guy you really hate or raping that girl you always had a crush on, etc. People with this kind of mindset were common, and since the ninjas were busy controlling the people and making a bunker, it was not possible to prevent everything. I then quickly controlled the man and commanded him to give himself to the Konoha police. I leave the house and try to look for other crimes around the village. I feel like a superhero. The moon, SASUKEH SPOV, we flew high in the sky, looking down below. All of us were riding on the ink-made eagle that was created by Sai. We were searching for clues about Toneri, Sasuke, and Hinabi. At least there were. I already know where he was, and I was just playing along with them at this point. I turned my eyes away from the ground below and looked at the artificial sun above our heads. That was not the sun, it was a space pocket that contained Toneri castle. If I were in my normal body, I would have charged through the barrier and defeated Toneri as soon as possible, but that was not the case. I was merely controlling a corpse. My strength right now is barely cage level. The reason I am doing so is that I could not afford to leave Earth totally defenseless from another OTSUTSUKI attack. Which might seem dumb, but I was not taking any chances. Believe it or not, my presence is the only thing that is keeping them from entering and attacking Earth. They arrived way earlier than canon, and there is even a new Otsutsuki who was not mentioned on this show. I may not be able to prove it, but I knew they were watching. They are observing the situation of the world and every move I make. I could teleport anywhere on Earth and immediately react to an attack, but I could not teleport from Earth to the moon, it was too far apart. That's one of the weaknesses of Flying Thunder God. The longer the distance and the bigger the target, the more you need chakra and skill. Even if it was only for a day, I could not afford to leave. I would have done so only if it was absolutely necessary, and even that would be swift. Luckily it was not necessary. There was Naruto who was also stronger than canon. With my guidance and his strength, dealing with this situation should not prove to be a hurdle. My presence here was only to make sure that Naruto accomplished the mission and to reap some benefits. We continued our search until it was dark. Then we made a camp in some random part of the jungle and took a rest. The group had meals, and we quickly went to sleep. I was the one on guard throughout the night, as I did not need any sleep. Some might say it's boring, but I did not feel such as I shared my consciousness with my original body. And also it was fun to see Naruto in a confused state of love stalking Hinata in the middle of the night. How the roles have changed. Controlling a puppet all the time was distracting, but since it's only one, so I was easily able to manage it. The next day soon came again, and we quickly set off early in the morning. We flew again for 3 hours before we came upon an ancient city. It looks abandoned. Hinata said as she activated her Byakugan. This town was likely built centuries ago. The settlement of the descendants of Hamar. I said as I observed the village. We should split up and take a closer look. Shikamaru suggested and we all agreed. I jumped down from my mount and with a thought I landed on a part of the city. The houses were built using clay and stones. It was situated on a mountain, so there were many steps and uphill roads. Broken kunai and such could be found which indicate that this was once occupied by shinobis. The structure of the houses differed slightly, and they got bigger and better as we moved closer and closer to the heart of the city. This indicates that the wealthy and people of higher status mostly lived at the center of the city. The interior of the houses was mostly empty, but you could find pots and furniture in some places. There were also skulls on the walls of the houses as decoration. This made me assume that the people living here were frequently at war, and warriors seemed to be looked up to in this society. I continued looking around until I stumbled upon a temple. It had an intricate and religious design. The architect was truly beautiful. There were broken statues and on the wall where they carved the symbol of the Tensugen, an ancient text was written. I observed the writings for some time before I was able to read it, ancient of crossing the path of humanity like all else. The first of a reborn moon, the Tensei, will destroy mankind. The writings were different and ancient, but it had similarities with ours. The other parts of the wall were destroyed, making it impossible to know what was written. I got out of the temple to inform the others. I sensed their chakra and flew towards each of them. My speed was nothing impressive, but I could fly. It was always exciting to do so. I called the others who were nearby, but I took some time to reach Hinata and Naruto, as they were far away from the temple. I landed on the ground and went inside the house where I felt both their chakra. I made my way inside and stopped when I saw the state they were in. Naruto was sitting on the ground while his bare back faced Hinata. On his back, there was a red bruise which Hinata was gently massaging with something. Wait, is that ointment? I questioned myself in wonder. Oh, Sasuke. Naruto saw me and greeted me. I sent a gaze of confusion at the current situation. Why was Hinata rubbing his back? Oh. He scratched the back of his head and gave me an awkward smile. Well, I got caught on a spider web and fell on my back. What? Seriously? Is fate already nerfing him even before Boruto? We found something at the center of the town. You should come. Said the part. I turned around and left. Unbelievable. There was a time when Naruto was able to tank any of my attacks head on and come out unscratched. There was once a time when he was instantly able to heal from any form of injury. Now he needs ointment on his back because he slipped and fell down. I guess love makes a man weaker. Third POV, they all gathered in the temple, and they curiously looked around. Then Sasuke showed them what he found and read out the writings for them. The Tensei I will destroy mankind. He finished and looked at their thoughtful expression. I don't like that. Not one bit. Shikamaru said as he looked at his palm where there was a tattoo clock that counted down the literal end of the world. The last part kind of rhymed, though. Sai commented with his awful smile that showed his lack of understanding of what a smile actually was. Why do special eyes always have to decide the end of the world, anyway? Naruto said as he gave Sasuke a side eye. It is said that the Rinnegan wielder will either destroy the world or heal the world in times of disorder. Not just destroy. Sasuke defended himself and the Rinnegan. Don't group together his eye with a Tensegan. Hinata, who was quiet all this time, came forward to get a better look, and when she neared the carvings a voice spoke out. Byakugan Princess. Then the temple began shaking, and a portion of the wall shrinks inwards to reveal a hidden passage that leads underground. They were all on guard, ready to crush whatever was to come out from the opening, but after some time nothing came out. Spooky, Sasuke said, I like it. Then he was the first to enter the opening and climb down the stairs. Seeing that, the others followed, and the passage took them to some kind of burial place, where they saw many coffins. Naruto brought his hands up and made a ball of chakra that illuminated the place. Under the light, they saw a man with a shabby appearance and pale skin a few meters away. Who are you? Sasuke questioned as his purple eyes glowed eerily in the dark. It's the Byakugan, I sense the Byakugan, said the man as he ignored the question and walked shakily towards Hinata. Sakura stepped in front of Hinata and warned, don't come any closer. The man stopped after that, and said, the Tensegan has been revived. His voice was hollow, it contained nothing but sound. Then he vomited a white ball of light that blinded the room. Sasuke immediately got to action, he vanished and appeared behind the man instantly. He had separated the man's body in half. The light vanished, and the man collapsed, his body turned to ash, but Hinata also collapsed. Hinata, they screamed in worry, take her outside. Sasuke said, and they immediately did as he said. Sasuke stayed for some time to check the place, and after a while, he also got out. Hinata was already awake, and she was sitting on the ground when Sasuke went up. She seemed fine, but anyone could see that she was greatly shaken. How do you feel? Sakura asked as she pushed her chakra inside Hinata to check her internals. I'm really fine, Sakura. Hinata said as she pushed her away. We have to be more careful next time. Shikamaru said, and they all nodded. It was getting dark, and the group stayed in one of the abandoned houses for the night. It was a weird and hectic day for all of them. The next day arrived, and the group immediately left the city to search for more clues. With the information they found yesterday, everyone acted with a sense of urgency. Everything was going smoothly, and they found another city. This one was much bigger than the last one. They did the same thing and sped up in search of clues. While everything was going on, Hinata always had a complicated look on her face. It was obvious that she was worried and something was bothering her. The others just assumed that it was because of her sister, only Sasuke knew what was really bothering her. The day quickly passed without any progress, and the group made a camp in the forest. It had been nearly 3 days since they arrived on the moon, but they had not made much progress on the mission. They did not have an idea where Toneri was, nor did they have a clue whether Hanabi was even alive or not. No one could have proper sleep that night. It was around midnight when Hinata silently woke up and moved away from the group to a secluded location near a lake with a knitting stick and a red scarf. She sat alone on a rock, knitting the red scarf in the silence of the night. Glowing butterflies gently roamed around the surroundings, giving a peaceful vibe to the whole scene. Time passed, and while Hinata was busy knitting, Naruto could be seen watching her from a distance. His face was filled with adoration for what he was seeing. It was the first time he had felt such a strong attraction to someone. It was not something he felt for anyone else. Hinata attracted a different part of himself, a masculine side of him. He couldn't keep on spectating anymore, he had to do more. He needed to talk to her. He approached her, and he quickened his pace when he saw the welcoming look on her face. Naruto stood before her, gazing down at her, while Hinata was looking up at him. A romantic atmosphere filled the air. Golden butterflies that glow in the dark dimly illuminate the night, and Naruto and Hinata share a precious moment. One thing led to another, and Naruto accidentally confessed to her. They stood face to face with each other as Naruto gently said, I love you, Hinata. Hinata's eyes widened at his confession, but she only remained silent. Naruto waited for her response. It took a long time, but he was willing to wait an eternity for it. But then Hinata's face dropped into the saddest frown, and her white eyes lost the sparkle they showed when she first heard him confess. She hung her head low, ashamed and guilty, as if she was about to rob the world of its son. "Hinata." Naruto called out with concern when he saw her state. Naruto was about to investigate what was wrong, but a new presence caught his attention. He turned his head and saw Toneri on top of a circular platform that was floating down towards them. Naruto pushed away everything else for a moment and stepped in front of Hinata. "Toneri, or is it another puppet? Where is Hanabi?" Naruto asked as he got ready for confrontation. Silence. "I am only here for Hinata's answer." Naruto was confused at the response. He turned to look at Hinata, but she wouldn't look back at him. "What is going on?" Hinata gently shoved the red scar she was holding at him, and she made her way towards Toneri. Naruto did not do anything as his brain worked overtime to process what was going on. Hinata got on the floating platform, and Toneri gently hugged her to his side. The ache in his heart caused him to scream out, "What the hell is going on?" Hinata finally met his eyes, and Naruto did not remember her ever looking at him like this. He almost did not recognize her. She looked at him like a stranger. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but this is goodbye." What is this? Why did it hurt him so much? He was used to getting rejected and someone leaving him. But this hurt a part of his heart that loved a woman. It was still a newborn. He wasn't ready yet. "You seem to be confused. It has been destined since antiquity that Hinata and I shall be wed," Toneri said as he looked at Naruto. He begged his heart to stop. "Wed?" Naruto looked at Hinata and got an affirmation from her. That crushed him. "You have horrible luck with the women you like." A voice came out from the forest. They all looked toward the owner of the voice, and they saw a man with eerie purple eyes coming out from the dark forest. Toneri was shocked and tense up when he saw his eyes. "Who are you?" Sasuke did not answer and stood near his friend. He gave him a pat on the shoulder. He then turned to look at Toneri again. "There will be no marriage without my permission," he said to Toneri. Toneri's face took a dark turn at that insolence. Then a frightening amount of force erupted from Toneri that managed to push the atmosphere itself towards Sasuke and Naruto. The force was relentlessly pressing at them before an equally strong repulsion force erupted from Sasuke. The two opposing forces collided, and the space in the middle trembled. The air erupted in distress, and a shockwave that uprooted the surrounding trees exploded. Spiral purple eyes that judge everything met the stunning blue eyes that ruled over life and death. The eye of God met the eye of reincarnation. SASUKH the air trembled and the very solid ground we stood on quaked in the wake of our clash. His eyes bore down on mine, and my eyes challenged his. S not obvious, but I saw his hair flutter in the aftermath of the clash, while my hair remains the same. Of course, my eyes are superior in every way. I thought to myself, satisfied. The sound of our clash woke up the others, and they quickly made their way towards us. Knowing this, Toneri gave me an annoyed look before the platform they stood on flew away from us. "Wait!" Hinata, Naruto shouted as he watched them leave. He turned to me for some kind of help, but I just said, "She's a girl, not mine. Go." He nodded with a determined face and leaped towards them and followed their tail. He uses a shadow clone to somehow maneuver in the air. I also saw the others riding an eagle flash in the sky to support Naruto. I was not being a dick by not joining them. I knew I would not be useful anyways since Almighty Push had a cooldown, and I honestly wanted them to get away. I really wished I could use more than one path at a time when I was controlling the puppet. But then it would be too OP, I guess. I watched the short fight take place in the sky before Naruto fell to the ground, defeated. Obviously, Naruto was greatly distracted and surprised to come out defeated in the clash, but who could blame him? I think I saw Hinata telling him to not misunderstand and to stop bothering her. Ouch. I knew Hinata was doing this to infiltrate Toneri castle, but damn, that was a violation. I made my way towards the crash site and found Naruto lying unconscious on the ground with the others surrounding him. What happened? I asked. As I observed his body, I saw the Tensoken chakra inside his body, suppressing his own chakra. Toneri attacked him with a weird energy. Sakura pointed at his chest and said, "Hit him right in the chest." I crouched near him and carefully watched his chakra pathways. His chakra and the Nine Tails chakra were quickly pushing out the Tensoken chakra. A night's rest and he should be fine. He'll be fine. Let's take him to the camp, I said as I picked up his limp body and put him on my shoulder. We then went to our camp and laid down Naruto inside a cave to rest. The others were outside, discussing the situation, while I stayed inside the cave, keeping an eye on Naruto. Then Sakura walked inside the cave and silently looked at me from the entrance. She stood there for a while with a thin smile, an expression of someone worried, but trying to stay positive. "What do you think happened to Hinata?" Sakura asked me as she walked towards me. She sat down on my side and gently rested her body on mine. Her face shows her worry and confusion. She had not been nearly as clingy as she used to be around me. Maybe she did not consider me as actually being with her since it was a puppet. But it seems right now she needed support. This was a time for a man to become an emotional support for his woman. The world was ending, Naruto was unconscious, and her friend had just gone away with the enemy. It must have been hard on her. I think she will be fine, she is strong. I said to her in the most reassuring way I could. She tore herself away from me and looked me right in the eye as she spoke. That is not what I asked. What do you want to know? I want to know what happened. What made her leave like this? She said. Do you think Toneri is holding her against her while using Hinabi? She asked me as if she was sure I had the answer, as if I knew what Hinata's objectives were. Maybe. I said. I reached out and petted her head once, twice. Her hair felt smooth in my hands, so I did not stop and instead pulled her to my chest. She just looked at my eyes for a while before she blushed deeply. A healthy crimson hue graced her face, and she squirmed under my hand. Don't worry too much. Everything will be fine, I will make sure of it. Third POV. Nothing was fine back on Earth, it was absolute chaos. The people of Earth were rushing to the underground bunkers made by the Shinobis. The village of the Hidden Leaf cannot protect only the people of the village, they have to make sure every person from the Land of Fire is safe. It was the same for other Shinobi villages as well. They not only have to worry about the village, but also the entire country as well. It was the whole world that was under threat, not just the Shinobi village. Millions of people came to the Shinobi villages in search of protection, making the whole ordeal chaotic. The Shinobis worked tirelessly, guiding the people, while the stronger ones were guarding the people from falling meteors. The sky was falling, meteors as big as a house were falling on Earth with unstoppable momentum, crashing, exploding, and destroying whatever was unfortunate enough to meet them. Everything was a mess. The world was ending. The cages of each village were busy destroying meteors before they reached the ground. They struggled, and they managed to destroy many of them, but they were only humans. They also missed many meteors. No village was left unscratched. They all suffered various levels of destruction. That is, except for Konoha. The village hidden in the leaf was unharmed because it had a guardian angel. A giant figure made of pure purple energy flew around Konoha. A flap of its wings was enough to disrupt the atmosphere, creating a hurricane, and a single swing of its sword was enough to destroy mountains. The sheer size of this human-like figure made the endless expanse of the sky look small. Its form tells of power, strength, and invincibility. The people of Konoha and even the Shinobi would watch it from time to time. The sight filled them with a sense of peace and awe. It was the end of the world, but the thing in the sky made them feel safe. Susanoo. That was the thing that was protecting them from harm. The Susanoo of Sasuke Uchiha. Meanwhile, Kakashi with the higher officials and some scientists were on top of the Hokage mountain, and they overlooked the situation of the village. A massive one is coming, warned a scientist who was observing the sky through a telescope. Roger. Kakashi said as he gazed up at the sky, where he could see a giant meteor probably bigger than a mountain, make its descent towards the village. Kakashi talks through his earpiece, Sasuke. But even before he informed him of the incoming meteor, he heard a reply, on it. With a flap of the giant wings of the Susanoo, Sasuke took to the sky. A shockwave could be felt throughout the land. The trees were bending at the pressure sent out, and the crowd moving towards the shelter, grabbed onto each other to not get blown away. They all looked towards the sky above the village, and saw the gigantic Susanoo flying up in the sky. The Susanoo floats in front of the meteor, and its hand reaches for the sword at his side. It unsheathed the sword and gave a huge swing towards the mass falling towards the village. The whole world shook uncontrollably, and the bright light of the explosion blinded all that had eyes. The sky was frantic, and the layers of air in the atmosphere were in absolute chaos. It was instantly cut in half, the thing exploded and was reduced to rubble. Next, with a flap of its mighty wings, it sweeps away all the remaining fragments, blowing them apart. The people below got goosebumps all over their bodies at such a display of power. They screamed and shouted in excitement, claiming that it was the power of a god. Everyone present to witness such a scene would not be able to forget their gratitude and admiration for the person, nor will they ever forget the power he holds. A name was permanently carved in their heart. Sasuke Uchiha. The castle of Toneri Otsutsuki. Third POV. Toneri was lying on his bed. The room was dark, and the bluish glow of his eye was the only source of light. He thrashed wildly on the bed, his hand covering his eye as he groaned in agony. His breathing was rough and erratic, but no matter how much pain he felt, the smile on his face could not recede. He felt euphoric and accomplished. Ha chuckle escaped his throat, and before long, this chuckle burst into full-blown laughter. He opened his eyes. They were blue and had a beautiful flower-like pattern on them. His eyes see so much, he could see everything. The Tensogen, he said as he grabbed his hair in excitement. The space in front of his eye twisted and trembled. The fabric of reality welcomed the return of a lost power. Has been revived. Team Shikamaru Camp. Third POV. The day is approaching noon, and it has been quite some time since Naruto had woken up. But the guy refused to leave the cave. He was sulking heartbroken. Shikamaru and Sakura had talked to him, but nothing seemed to work. Naruto was hurt emotionally, his spirit was broken, and he didn't know how to react to the situation. The group was sitting by the fire. There was silence as everyone was busy with their thoughts until Sasuke suddenly stood up. This is ridiculous, he said as he turned and headed towards the cave Naruto was in. Shikamaru and Sai looked at him, a little hopeful that Sasuke might be able to talk some sense to Naruto. Don't be too rough on him. Sakura sat inside as she saw him disappear into the cave. He didn't say yes. Sasuke walked inside, and he soon came upon Naruto, sitting on the ground while facing his back towards the entrance. "Naruto," he called out. Naruto just turned his head to the side to take a glance at him. "Sasuke," he said. His voice did not carry the usual strength and sunshine, it was weak and almost timid. "What do you think you're doing?" Sasuke asked as he stopped a few meters away from him. He got no answer. "Are you going to give up?" Just like that. Only silence was his reply. "I see, give it all up. Being Hokage, you girl. I am sure you don't even love Hinata." That got a reaction from him. Naruto leaps towards him and grabs him by the neck. Then he pushed Sasuke to the wall cracked under his strength. Are picking a fight, Sasuke then launched his palm and hit him in the chest. A great amount of repulsion force erupted out, throwing Naruto to the other side of the wall. Sasuke dashed forward and pins Naruto on the wall. "Listen up, loser, you don't give up on what you love," he shouts, and Naruto looks at him in the eye. "Do you think it's fair for Hinata? Once, and you already gave up." Sasuke headbutted Naruto, causing his legs to buckle and kneel on the ground. Sasuke had the higher ground. He looked down on him and said, "I will tell you who you are. You are the most persistent and stubborn living creature I have ever met. You traveled through the 5 great shinobi villages just to bring me back. No matter how many times I try to push you away, you won't give up. And even Sakura, how long have you chased after her? She rejected you countless times, yet you keep on doing the same thing over and over again." Naruto was shaken, his eyes shook before he said with a pained voice, "But Hinata left me, to be with that guy." "Oh please," Sasuke groaned. "Did you see her face? Does she look happy? Hinata has loved you forever, a feeling that strong does not change overnight." He pulled Naruto even closer as he said, "Listen here, you are going to stop whatever it is that you are doing, and you are going to save Hinata. You are going to suck it up and fight for what you love and believe, as you always do." He let go of Naruto, and walked towards the exit. "Until then, don't even call yourself Naruto." Naruto pondered on the things he had just heard and couldn't help but laugh at himself. He was acting so pathetic. Sasuke was right, Hinata had loved someone like him all this time. As a man, he can't just give up on her. There was something he needed to say to her. But first, he needed to save her. He got up and walked outside the cave. He saw the others smile when they saw him. He smiled back. Then his eyes caught Sasuke's backquotes. Seeing his determined look, Sasuke smiled too. Naruto continued walking until he was far away from the cave. He looked at the artificial sun in the sky, a place where Hinata was taken. "I'm coming, Hinata," he whispered as he reached out to grab the sun. "So, what's the plan?" Naruto asked when he felt Sasuke coming behind him. "Plan? You don't do well with plans." Sasuke shook his head with a smile. "Just charge in through the front door. Simple, I like it," Naruto said as he bent his knees and concentrated. He joined the palm of his hands, and a huge amount of chakra exploded out from him. It was large and potent, nearly suffocating. The air around hummed as a golden cloak of chakra covered his body. The yellow chakra began flowing out of his body like a broken dam. Strong, heavy, and nigh endless. The chakra twisted and slowly shaped itself into a humongous fox with 9 tails. Its eyes eclipsed mountains and reached the sky. It lets out an ear-splitting roar when it finishes forming. The whole jungle shook and the clouds in the sky were blown away with just its roar. 9 of its tails moved towards its mouth. The fox opens its maws, and along with the tips of the 9 tails, they build up a huge black ball of destruction. Space trembled due to the sheer mass of the black ball, until that compressed itself in front of its open jaw. Then, the 9 tails leaped into the sky. The air made its way as his huge form flew toward the artificial sun. Shikamaru and the others followed behind him, and they all moved towards the castle of Toneri. The artificial sun opened up its barrier, and countless amount of puppets riding on a hawk flew out, trying to stop the approaching enemy. But they were unable to bear even a fraction of Naruto's power. All they could do was to be destroyed as Naruto got closer and closer to the barrier. "Kurama, release!" Naruto yelled as the supercharged Hail Beast Bomb amplified by nature chakra shot forth. It shot forward at blinding speed, and the atmosphere whined, unable to resist its power. Its momentum was unstoppable, and the power was unimaginable. The barrier stood no chance and completely shattered when it came in contact with the attack. Toneri was not ready for the calamity he invited. And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. Catch you in the next one.